Welcome to episode 3 of The Well. I'm Drew.
And I'm Kat.
Took you a minute there. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. I
Happy
feel like
Sunday.
that's the way we kick this off. Every day is Happy Sunday. Every day is Happy Sunday. Today's topic was inspired by a conversation last night. Now, it's not easy coming up with topics. You would think that this stuff is like just rolls through your brain. You're like, "Oh, we have a backlog of tons of material." We're not there yet. We're getting there. But we were out last night and we got to talking. We're recently empty nesters, right? Kids
Yes.
are all out of the house. And, we were talking in the sense of it's like, it's a great thing and a weird thing. We were talking that there's a lot less light in the house, that youth brings, excitement, newness, and kind of missing it, right? We're kind of missing it. So we were talking about that last night, which brings us to the topic today around parenthood, right? Let's talk about being parents and a little bit of our backstory, right? We're a blended family, so a little bit different. We started to co-parent later in life because we were not together when our kids were born. So
Right.
we started later, and that was an interesting thing when it comes to a blended family. So we thought it would be interesting to share a little bit of Q&A, and I wore my help shirt today.
Very appropriate.
I feel like whenever we're talking about parental things, it's always a cry for help. So
So
hence
true.
the shirt today.
Yes.
Hence the shirt today. So we'll keep it with the same format. We'll do our little Q&A. We'll hopefully keep you entertained for the next hour or so. And I'm actually looking forward to this conversation because truth be told, until I met Catherine, I did not have the best self-image of being a parent. So she has really, it's interesting, and this could be a topic for a future show, but it's interesting to see your partner, spouse, wife, person, whatever, not only as your better half, but as a coach, a mentor that really, you don't necessarily see them that way all the time, but wow, you really showed up for me in that way. So,
Oh,
yeah, hey,
you make a good team.
that is true. That is true. So, what question do you have for me? I can't wait to hear some of these.
Uh, so I actually want to go back to the beginning and
Okay.
I want to ask about what was your initial impression when you first were assimilated into the family dynamic? So, Becca and Travis. And at the time, I think Travis was eighth grade, seventh grade, and Becca was sophomore in high school, junior, something like that.
Good question. I felt shell shocked, overwhelmed, uncomfortable, out of place. Anything that you could equate to discomfort, but not in I'm using strong language, but it was not to the point where I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't handle this." And that's really where you came in and made it very comfortable for me to figure out my own way with you
Mhm.
just kind of tapping me in line, right? Like, "Hey, I see you're kind of veering off on the left. Let me just tap you back in, right, to the center." So it's never easy walking into an environment that you didn't help create. Right. So I think that was part of the challenge is I had to figure out my space within the three of you, right? Like, how do
Mhm.
I fit
Right.
into this equation? And I will say I feel very fortunate that, both the kids were very accommodating, welcoming, comfortable, right? There was no awkwardness. So that felt, I wasn't expecting that. I think that was one of the surprises where I was like, wow, I didn't expect that because coming from, my upbringing with divorced parents and having, other people pop in and out of life, I was not the most welcoming of children.
Mhm.
I definitely
Yeah.
did not. I expected more of the way that I was, had to experience that more so than what I experienced with you and your children.
So do you feel like there was a lot of friction with the kids in the beginning?
No,
Good.
I didn't feel any friction. I don't think friction is the right. I think I just felt foreign, right? Like I felt like I didn't know the language. I didn't
Foreign object.
understand how yeah, because all of you have you're all very close. So you have a different language, you understand each other. You and Travis used to, I want to say drive me nuts, but drive me nuts because you have like your own speech pattern. Like you could complete each other's sentences. I'm like, I have no clue what either one of you are talking about because you're communicating in like cryptic code. I'm just like, what is this? So I found that it just takes a while, and I think allowing space for someone to grow into the environment as opposed to, really forcing you into something that you're just not ready for was really helpful for me because it just allowed me to again to find my role
Mm,
and figure it out.
right.
What's something you swore early on that you would never do as a parent,
Mm.
but absolutely do now?
Oh, okay. I would have to say definitely or in the early years, I was thinking, well, I'm not gonna be like, most parents that are going to nag their kids about, "Well, where are you? Who you hanging out with? Da 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 da." And I do find myself as I get older, like checking in with both kids and saying, "Hey, send me the address of where you are," or "Hey, what are you doing? Who are you hanging out with?" I try really hard not to do that, but it's funny as I get older and as the kids get older, I find myself doing a lot of the exact same things that my parents did or that other parents I know did. So it's funny that we try to resist being the parental authority, and we're like, no, we're going to be the cool parents. But I also think too, like, I feel like I do an okay job balancing it. I don't ask unnecessary questions, or try not to because I'm emotional. I just try to say, "Hey, just send me the info just in case something happens," or whatever it is. But it is funny how we do fall into that. I wouldn't say trap, but it's what parents do?
So it's that has, I think, been one of the more interesting conversations that we have, and we have a lot of conversations.
Yes,
So
we do.
and good conversation. That's a positive.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it has been, wow, I get it now. The aha moments of why your parents did the things they did, why they
Yes,
said the things they said. And I'm like, I find myself more and more turning into what I used to say, why I'll never be like that. I'm never going to say that. I'm never going to. And here I am, right? And you hear me reflect on it all the time. Like, gosh, my father used to say this to me all the time, and I
right,
find myself using it. It has actually helped create some wisdom in my insecurity of being a parent or that parental kind of experience. So I do find that interesting, right? That's
right.
always it's always an interesting conversation, especially when you're like, "Oh, you're like, I just want to call my parents and apologize." Right? Sorry. I get it now. It just took me a lot longer than I had hoped, but I apologize for all the bad things and hard times. So, delay.
Delay. No, I was thinking that is so very, very true. And I was actually thinking of my next question, for
Good
you.
segue.
A good segue. I was thinking to myself, I was actually laughing internally at the beginning of you assimilating into the family unit, and I was thinking how it's really interesting having a partner that is coming in later in life, and they are observing things that you didn't really notice or you weren't very aware of, and so I think it's funny, some of the most important things that I've learned as a parent came from you pointing things out, and I'm like, "Yeah, actually, you're right, I didn't really think about that." Case in point, do you remember when we used to leave all the dishes in the sink? Like, the kids would leave all their dishes in the sink, and I would leave them, like, overnight?
Yes. Yes, I will never it's still PTSD for me. I'm still envisioning the mountain of it wasn't a mountain, but the dirty dishes
Oh,
being left
yeah.
in the sink when the dishwasher is right there, or you could just hand wash them, right? I mean, they weren't that
Oh,
dirty.
yeah. I mean, it was so crazy. It was so funny because that was just something I did, like my family did, and then, I've obviously passed that along to my kids, and I'm like, I didn't really think about that." They could and I was wearing myself out, like, doing the dishes, right? And I know so many parents that deal with the same thing, and then you were like, why don't they should just, like, hand wash or, put it in the dishwasher right when they're done with it, and I'm like, that's a really great idea." How long did it take for us to get into that routine?
Oof.
A while, right?
Yeah, it took a while, but
New habit.
with persistence, right? And not I will say one thing I'll give us both credit for, and I know this we're not really talking about a question, but I think this has been eye-opening for me, is the level of patience you can have when teaching, right? You don't need to yell
Right,
at them. You don't need to belittle them. You just need to say you're accountable for this. And
right,
if you're not, and if you don't end up doing it, there's never an argument because they already know what happens if they're not doing what they're accountable for. So it's always upfront. There's no like secret. You're not going to, like yelled or screamed at. It's just, hey, you didn't do the dishes. Why not? Actually, I
right.
don't care why not. You didn't do the dishes. This is what you get, right? It's just that binary.
Yeah,
So I appreciated that you allowed both of us to go through that process with the kids to create accountability, right? They
yeah,
really became accountable for their own stuff.
they did, and how difficult would you say that was for you? And then how difficult was it, do you think, for me? Because I feel like it's 2 different use cases.
For me, it was difficult because I'm not a patient person. So
Yeah,
I just want to scream at you and say, get it done.
uh-huh.
So that took a lot of I don't even know the right word. It just took a lot for me to really be self-aware, to understand I'm super triggered by small things like that. I don't know why. So it took a while for me to be able to calm myself down so I could look at it from a rational, logical point of view and not an emotional, angry kind of like, I've asked you 15 times, right? Why are you still doing this?
Right,
So, and I love this quote, right? When the student's ready, the teacher appears. And I feel like kids are very much like that. There's they're not ready for the teacher. So
right,
as we're teaching, sometimes they're not learning or listening because, I mean, heck, they're kids. So also understanding that they're not of age to kind of get some of this, or
right.
they just don't care. They
Yeah,
don't care. Why is this important to me? It's not,
and
right? So
it's hard to know what they're thinking, if they're truly not getting it, because their brains do develop differently, as they're getting into the teen years versus they really just don't care and don't wanna do it, you know,
it's true.
or a little bit
That
of
is
both.
true. Yeah, yeah. I think grace. I think that's the word that keeps coming to mind. You really need to give grace,
Yeah,
not be a doormat, not be a pushover, and not say, I don't feel like one of the things that we experience, right, is I don't feel like dealing with this today.
yeah,
I
that
don't
was
want
a
to deal
big
with this
thing.
today.
Yeah,
So the fatigue of holding the line
right,
is hard, especially you worked a full day, you had a crappy day at work. The last thing you feel like doing is dealing with problems at home.
right.
So that's easy to say, I'll deal with this tomorrow. And that's where I think you and I really spent a lot of time is it's now. We need to address it in the moment
Yes,
in real time so it doesn't happen so we don't carry it forward tomorrow. And the one thing I loved that you put into the house, right? The part of the house rule is we don't stay angry, right? True
right.
forgiveness is, hey, I forgive you and it's done, right? Like there is no going back. So
Squash it.
that was hard for me because I love holding a grudge, and I absolutely
And I
keep an
don't.
inventory of every single thing that went wrong, right? Like, I can go through the entire list. It's the only thing my brain is able to remember, which is probably sickness. I don't understand why, but I find that process or that way of thinking was really, really helpful, not only for us, but I feel like for the kids too, because they also got to learn how to deal with things and forgive, right? And
Yes.
not we never fought like, there wasn't a lot of, like, screaming and fighting. There was a couple
No.
instances, but it was pretty lax.
But would you say for me, it was emotionally taxing? 'Cause I I was always afraid to overstep the line of I didn't wanna ruin relationships with the kids. That was always the biggest fear. How far can I push? Trying to find that balance is hard. Being the disciplinarian, but also being the loving parent, it's hard. So, I'm sure you have seen me really, really struggle with that.
Yes, you could tell that it was extremely uncomfortable for you to go in that direction, and I probably was a bit more overbearing about it or keyed in on it just because of my upbringing was much different.
Mhm.
So, I wanted to create I wanted to help create an experience that, kind of it didn't grow you up in the way that I like hard knocks, right? Like, hey, let me throw you out in the deep end and you're going to learn how to swim or you're not. I
Right.
feel like through love, encouragement, and accountability, we were help building people that understood how to balance all of this differently, right? How to
Yeah.
be responsible.
Right.
And that was huge. And I feel like what was uncomfortable to watch with you was having to be extremely diligent and disciplined not to sway. To be
Yeah.
like,
The
I
consistency.
yeah, and especially, me being the outsider and these are your children and not that we were ever hard on them in that way, but watching you not like being afraid that you were pushing them away
Yeah.
because you were loving them differently was hard for me not to be like, okay, maybe this is too much.
Yeah.
Maybe I am putting something that shouldn't be there. So I did waver at points
Oh, I think
on
we
some
both
of
did.
these.
Yeah, for sure. Because your upbringing was very different from mine. And I felt like my family wasn't really great at confrontation. Like we were always very quick to just forgive and move on, which I think you and I both came from extreme sides, but I feel like together we were able to provide a good balance, but it took a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversation, a lot of tears on my part, and trust, I would say, because you have to really trust somebody new coming in. And, it's really hard, I think for me especially, to put the emotion aside when it comes to the kids and look at it from a very objective point of view. So, like, for example, it wasn't just about the not doing the dishes. It was accountability, which was the bigger life lesson, and saying, "Okay, if you can't even put your own dishes away, how can I trust you driving a car? How can I trust you out by yourself in a situation where you may or may not choose the wrong decision?"
And I think too, to yes, and what you just said, for me also, it was, and I'm going to specify your son more so than anything in this,
Yeah.
is that not just women, but women in particular were not put on this earth to serve you, to do your dishes, to cook for
Yeah,
you, to take
right.
care of your laundry, right? You need a level of independence and learn how to be independent so you can be cared for differently.
Yes.
And that was important to me, that he was able to see partnership differently. Now, if you're with somebody that wants to do those things, you appreciate it differently when as opposed to expecting it, right? I expect you to do those things, so I don't appreciate it.
Right.
So if I do those things and you pick up the slack one week or you just like doing it more, I'll appreciate it differently. So I think that was also really important for us, or at least in my mind, for him to have that balance. And I also thought for, your oldest as well, is just being able to witness, kind of a team. And I always thought, the household should be a team. We're all a team. We all
Right.
have
Right.
things we do well, we have things we don't do great. So as a team, how are we working together? Right?
Right.
It's just because we're a family doesn't necessarily mean we know how or what that means.
Yeah.
So let's lighten up the mood a little bit.
Yes.
Not that this, I mean, this is good conversation. I think, we talk about this a lot, but I want to
Right.
know what your most embarrassing parenting fail is, if you have one.
I actually don't feel like I have an embarrassing one. And to be fair, I don't get embarrassed easily. Like I'm pretty.
That is true.
I mean, I laugh at like I'm always doing something so ridiculous or saying something ridiculous, so I don't even care anymore.
LeMay.
The May. So instead of lame, but I don't have an embarrassing one. I really don't. Sorry.
Okay.
Fail.
Yeah, that's disappointing. Well, what is one
Yeah.
lie you've told your kids that has totally backfired?
Okay, that's not a good question either. I don't think I've
Okay.
ever really I haven't really lied.
All right, I'm going to be doing a lot of editing and post. What's the most surprising thing about watching your kids grow up?
That's a great question. I would say that all the hard work. So parenting is hard work, and I don't think anyone is ever truly prepared for being a parent, especially like, they're cute when they're little, and they're, like, fun, and you get to buy them cute clothes and, take fun pictures, and, as they get older, the problems just get bigger, and, as a parent, you have to decide how much you're gonna invest, and, it requires a lot of patience, a lot of energy, and a lot of time, and a lot of money. And I would say that you think like, looking at both Becca and Travis, over the span of years, you think how much you've poured in to them, and then you think, "Are they ever gonna get it? Are they ever gonna get it?" I know there are other parents out there that can relate, and you see this one glimmer of hope, and you're like it keeps you going, right? Like, you're like, "You did laundry? You could" okay, for example, Travis, when we were snowboarding, I think when we were in Breck, we came back and he had cleaned the whole stovetop, master clean, and we did not ask him to do that, and he's like, I cleaned this and I did that," and, he was working at Jersey Mike's at the time, so shout out to Jersey Mike's for teaching him how to clean a stovetop really well, and I was just like, "Wow," like, "Bravo," and it doesn't happen often, in those early teen years, but man, you hang on to those, that's
You
like
really do.
that's life, you're like,
You really
"Yes,
do.
I am doing something right," obviously, because like, it is a thankless job majority of the time being a parent, like, during those early teen years as they're developing into young adults, and so, yeah, I would say it's always surprises me when things click, or like Becca's like, "Hey, I followed up on this thing that I needed to follow up on," and it's like, "Wow, okay, yeah, this is awesome,"
Yeah, the unsolicited kinda I it's funny that the stovetop thing really still sticks out for
Oh,
me as
yeah.
well, and we've been fortunate where we have when we have traveled for short trips, we always came home to a clean house. I have to say, like, that was
Yes,
always surprising, right? And so, shout out to Travis and Becca for
yeah,
being good when we're not watching. I think that was the other thing is, when we're not watching, it still feels like they may kind of stray a bit, but they still
right,
get tapped back into the center, right? They still feel your tap on the shoulder to say, "Hey, you sure you want to do that? You sure that's a
right,
great idea?" So, I really do feel like you've put the voice in their ear and it stays there. It
yes.
absolutely stays there.
Yes, so true. Okay, so I have a question. What did you learn about yourself in the process the past few years? From the time that you entered the house to now, right? Like, both kids are in college, both are doing well. So, what did you learn about yourself as a parent and as an individual?
Wow, that's a big question for me. I think what comes to mind first and foremost is, wow, I was really an unhappy, miserable person. So that was first and foremost.
Wow.
Yeah, just in the sense of I feel like there was a lot of insecurity around parenting for me and I just was coming out of a lot of let's just say I was in a fog for a lot of years. So, I think when all of this, kind of evolved and stepping into this household and kind of dancing around the topic, I think what really resonated with me and Travis says this to me still to this day, smile. I wanna see you smile, and I'm like, "Wow," and it's something that people have said to me forever, right? I'm not a smiley person, but so it was interesting to see someone that's younger seeing that. I didn't like it. Like, I did not like that quality about me, and I feel like there was a high level of exposure for me through the kids to see myself differently, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"I don't like that person," right?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm bringing the energy in the house down. I'm kind of this cloudy the day was always cloudy, but
Yeah.
didn't took me some time to break through that, but through the encouragement of you and the kids, I feel completely different. Now,
You
I
are.
feel like myself. I
Yeah.
feel like I can be myself. I could be silly, I could be funny, I can just be me, and you've all allowed me to do that without fear of judgment. To be honest, the judgment piece, I don't even care about anymore because I'm like, we're having fun. And
Yeah,
that's
no,
one
you
thing
don't
I
care.
think was missing is you all taught me how to have fun
Yeah.
in a family environment, which didn't feel very comfortable or I didn't really know that very well. So I really that's one thing that really stuck out to me.
Yeah. Well, I do remember actually you used to tell me a lot just when we were together before you moved in, and you were like, I don't you were never very comfortable kind of being yourself a lot, especially like around other people. And Travis has an extremely silly personality. And so I'll never forget, like, you just in the kitchen, just acting incredibly silly. And you were okay with it, and I felt like that started, like, you started opening up a lot more after that, which was because Travis just thought it was hilarious. It was a safe space. And I really enjoyed seeing your transformation, and it wasn't overnight. I mean, it took like a couple of years in the beginning and seeing you just really start to be super comfortable and, be it you were to your point, so much more yourself. It was like there was a facade, but then underneath it was all this awesome stuff and it was like, "Oh, let it out," And now you're silly all the time. So it's awesome.
It's been very freeing. I guess
Yeah,
that's the other thing that it's taught me is kind of break the bondage of the shackles of my own insecurity and allowing myself to kind of see myself differently and
right,
not care about certain things. And I am very grateful to all of our children for that, right?
right,
So I'm very grateful for being able to have the opportunity to also grow. And I think, as parents, we don't necessarily grow in the way that, or we don't see it as growth all the time,
right,
right? It's almost compromise, but it's actually growth. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Growth happens in the hardest of situations or things, right? So
mhm,
we've had some huge growth through hard times. Those hard times have always warranted a good outcome.
right.
So let's see what we can do with the next set of questions. What's something we do differently because we started later?
That's a really good one. I think that personally, like, there's a lot more patience, definitely more patience. And we've experienced a lot of the world, and being able to look at parenting through that perspective has provided a lot of just a lot of opportunity to approach situations differently. Being older, I do feel like we've been able to well, for me, not be so emotional like in my early 20s, like being more emotional about things. And now that I'm older, I feel like I've grown, and so that has allowed me to parent differently in these years than in the early years, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Hopefully, everyone that's listening, all three of you, it made sense too. So make sure you're liking, subscribing, and following. By the way, throw a little plug in there. But that's a good response. Good response.
I would like to hear from you. Like, what do you feel is different in this time, in your later years?
I am less selfish, self-centered.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel I am more patient and there's a calmness. Before it was, it was always the hurricane,
Mhm.
right? Always a hurricane. And we never hit the eye of the storm. There was never a calm place. So for me, that's before all this.
Yeah.
So I think, through trauma, PTA, whatever you want to equate it to, I'm not sure I ever allowed anyone to help me
Mhm.
because I was so used to doing everything by myself. So I was not good at accepting feedback, guidance, which is ironic, right? Since what I do for a living.
Right.
So it was hard for me to change. It was
Yeah.
hard for me to feel confident and comfortable that it was worth changing. And also change for me, not
Mhm.
do it because it's the right thing to do or that's what you want or the other person, right? So for me, all this change was helping me evolve into a different person. So
Yeah.
because I wanted to. I wanted to change because I didn't like the constant reflection of what I was seeing. And I guess I never had the courage to do it before. So you all helped me, develop the level of courage I needed to take those steps while you all encouraged me through it and loved me through it. And I think that was you didn't judge me. You weren't like, "Wow, you're a piece of garbage. You're a terrible person. You need to do these things," right? You just loved me through it in a different way than I had experienced, or I was different to allow you all to love me. And I'm not saying that people in the past haven't done that. I'm just saying I just may have not been ready
Mhm.
at all. So it's a shame because we talk about this like, what if we met earlier in life?
Right,
And I
yeah,
always respond and say, I don't think it would have been this.
right.
I don't think I was ready for what this is, right? I mean, it's a shame that it takes men so long to figure this stuff out.
It is. No, I mean, but you got there.
Well, we're still learning.
Mm.
We're lifelong learners here. We're still learning. We are still learning. But yes, we are
It's
in a
funny.
different spot.
You're the same person. I could say you're the same person from day 1 I met you in certain ways, in, like, really good ways, and then you're a very different person because I feel like a lot of the burdens that you carried have fallen away. So, I like seeing that, and I feel like it took everybody, and it takes a lot of patience. Again, I use that word patience, but it really does. I mean, do you remember the Xbox debacle?
Yes.
Okay. So, talk about
Wait,
the okay.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Talk about the Xbox with Travis when you first were in the family versus now.
So Travis would go upstairs and game, right? And he would be up there for hours
Uh-huh.
screaming, carrying on, being extremely loud. And I'd be like, this is terrible. Like,
Uh-huh.
this is awful. Like, what are we doing? And we would have dinner. Like, we would try and have dinner. This was during COVID. So
Right,
every
yeah,
night we would try and sit down and have dinner. And it was always a problem to get him to come downstairs. And I'm like,
right,
this is crazy. Why am I fighting somebody? Like, no. So I think it became to the point where now I would say we had to stay diligent and in the end we had to do some drastic things,
right. Drastic,
but
very drastic.
it was rough. It was
Yeah.
rough for me because I wanted to be like, all right, I'm gonna and I say this with a grain of salt, but in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna go kick your door down, right? I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
go bust through the door and be like, you need to keep it down or you're getting rid of this
Right.
devil box,
Yeah.
right? Like this thing's got to
Double
go. You
box.
are just out of
It really
control.
was.
But I will say, and I don't want to say struggle. We dealt with this for a couple years and towards I guess what was it? 16, 15,
Right.
we started to basically say, okay, you can have it for X amount of hours. And then you have to give it back to us, right? Like a rental system. You can
Oh,
rent it for
yeah.
2 hours and then you give it back
He wasn't allowed to have it in his room at that point.
because we couldn't, because he was playing all night
Yes. And we
and
couldn't
sneaking it.
trust him.
Right. So if we can't, and I think that was the thing, it was trust, right? You can play as much as you want as long as you're following the rules.
Right.
Right. So you need to have, we were talking about this trust is currency, right? So if you're continuing to build trust, you're continuing to add to the bank account, right? You're
Right.
continuing to build credits. So, but the moment you mess up, it wipes the bank account out, right? You're back at zero, reset.
Right.
And I think that was the hard lesson was it's a lot harder to, and you said this to them all the time, it's a lot harder to build trust than it is to lose it.
Yes.
And it's real easy to lose it. And then you got to start all over again. And it's actually harder each time you lose it. And I think the Xbox, as tough as it was, I think really was an interesting teaching moment where Travis started to understand because we took it away, how much distraction it was creating, how
That is
much
so true.
lack of focus and just this mania, right? He
Right.
was so locked in, he couldn't concentrate on anything else. And when we started to reduce that time, he was like a different kid.
He was.
Like,
It
literally a
was
different kid, and I'm
crazy.
not saying all video games are that, rot the brain, but I will say that limiting exposure to that, to and even taking it away, I mean, I still to this day think him not having it for a while was one of the best things ever.
Oh, yeah. Like, even the past
So,
2 years before he went to college, he didn't even have it. And
yeah,
even
and
he
what
would say sorry, I'm interrupting because I remember specifically a point in time, like, 2 or 3 years ago where he was like he's like, "You I know I've got a problem with the Xbox." He admitted that, and even now, he's like, "I hate being on my phone so much." He's like, it's a time suck," and he notices that about his friends. If they're on their phone for a long time, he's like, "Man, like, it's a waste," you know?
so I love that about him, that he's becoming a lot more self-aware.
Yeah.
And I think too, it was he was exploring other things, right? Because he started to
Yes,
read,
right.
right? He actually opened up a book and would read at night. He would listen to, what was he listening to? Podcasts. He
Oh,
was listening to
yeah, yeah,
podcasts. So we limited his electron. Also, I do think, which was probably the hardest out of it all, was he was not allowed to have his phone in his room.
yeah, after,
So
like, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So he had to
yeah,
find
so
something else to do.
yes, no electronics, and I think that was allowed him to develop good sleep habits,
Mhm.
less
Yeah,
distraction, and less compulsion to do things, and that was a hard lesson. I mean, that was hard for us, and I'm sure it was extremely hard for him, but I do
yeah,
love what it created. He would sew at night, he would create clothing at night, he would listen, read, and experience all new things, right? He would teach
yeah,
himself, and then so during the day, he would learn something, and then he would go upstairs and try and replicate it, so he'd be sewing or cutting or designing clothing.
right,
So I feel like it created the school of hard knocks always creates something, right?
right,
Whether it's good or bad, the devil is in the details. But I do think that in this experience, it really helped ramp up desire to see things differently and create opportunities that may have not been have happened as early as they did if that experience didn't occur.
right. And man, I struggled. I really struggled with the consistency because sometimes I would be like, "Man, I just wanna let them go do whatever they wanna do." Like, I'm tired, you know? I mean, I know parents feel that all the time, you just wanna be like, "Go play on the Xbox," or, "Go hang out with your friends," and, bec adulting is hard. You've got your own life and then you've got your kids' lives that you've got to manage. And it's some days it can just be a lot. And I remember when Becca first started college, that was really difficult for me to kind of let her or kind of challenge her to be more independent instead of calling me for help with homework or, and Becca's a different use case a little bit, but, pushing her to be more independent, man, it killed me. Like, I was like, I'm so used to, especially as a parent, you're so used to doing for your kids, from the moment they're born to, but there is a time where you're like, okay, like they're at a certain age now where they should be responsible and accountable for themselves because it's only hurting them if they're not, because you're not going to be around forever. I mean, they have to learn, they should be learning to be independent. And so I remember Becca, she'd be like, "Hey, I'm concerned about this class or this homework. I can't, and I would say, did you contact your professor? Instead of like her coming to me all the time because it was easy, right? And I was always willing to help. I had to kind of pull back more and more. And she knows this. And so now she's super independent. Which is so awesome to see. We're talking about like the rewards, being able to see your child being independent and doing their own thing is such a joy. It makes all the years of hard work so rewarding.
Yeah, I really going back, I really wish I would have invested in Kleenex because gosh, we went through a lot of tissues. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we sure did. A
there
lot.
was a lot of late nights that calming everyone down and making sure that you were okay
Right.
to proceed.
Yes.
So, which is again, you know, those uncomfortable moments, I think that's really how you if you step up or you don't, right?
Yeah.
And those uncomfortable moments kind of dictate how your kids will see you, right? So I think being strong and being diligent and not wavering
Yeah.
is important. Not for everything. I'm not talking about being uncompassionate and,
No, no, no.
like a dictator, but
You have
I
to
do
do it through love. You really the purpose for what you do has to be out of love. It can't be resentment. It can't be you can't be like, "Oh, my kid ticked me off and now I'm gonna do something to them." Like, you just can't do that and expect your kids to grow up to be a certain way, with so, I would say so when the kids were first becoming teenagers, or like Becca was a senior and then she went to college, and then Travis was like ninth grade, 10th grade. I did do some counseling with a therapist. I just needed an outside party, to kind of help me be objective about parenting and where I was at my stage of life. And she was so helpful. She would tell me two different things that I kept in my head. Am I catastrophizing? Am I going off the deep end thinking that the worst things are going to happen, which I feel like we all do catastrophize at various degrees in life about different things. And then she would say, okay, what would you tell your friend about their child? About their teenager. And that one always got me because it helped me take emotion out of it and look at it more objectively. And I was like, oh, wow. So in certain situations, I'd be like, oh, I'm really struggling. I tell you, like, gosh, I'd be like crying and I'm like, I don't know, am I being too hard on them? Am I not being too hard on them? And then I would remember my therapist saying, well, what would you tell your best friend with their teenager? And I'd be like, okay, then I would tell them the exact thing that I'm doing. And I think that's always helpful. And I don't think there's anything wrong with seeking outside therapy to help you keep an objective point of view.
Yes, I'm recanting all the moments a lot of this it's interesting to relive some of this because it is still triggering, right? Like
Yes.
still you kind of go back to it and you're like, gosh, that was tough. And that kind of leads me into this question for you is what's something this second chapter of parenting that has healed for you?
I would say, I know this is kind of serious, but being divorced, I never thought I would be divorced. And when I got divorced, it was very upsetting for me because I felt like my dream of a family had 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 been destroyed, and I thought, gosh, I'm not going to be able to rebuild and my kids are going to suffer because of my mistakes, my choices in life because I made bad choices in life, which I'm sure we all do, right? But I think I was super hard on myself, and I struggled for a couple of years after my divorce, and I think this second, like, phase of life has been very healing because, I feel like we've built something really amazing. When I'm struggling in life, I think, "Oh, I wanna be home with my family." I don't think of us as coming from separate areas, of life. It feels very cohesive and united, and I feel very, very excited that we've built a family, and it feels really good. So, I would
I
say
love
that
that.
that's what's really healed. Like, my dreams are still there. They've come to fruition, just maybe in a different way.
Yeah, and I just want to respond to that as well. I think for me, what's healed for me is I've been able to forgive my parents differently than I was able to before because I can
Yeah.
see things differently, especially going through a couple iterations of this and then looking back to see what they went through. It's hard. And I,
Yeah,
I
it
think as
does.
children, we don't understand how hard it is. So it gave me perspective on why some of the things happened. So it allowed me to kind of offload some of that angst. And maybe
Right.
that's why I'm in a calmer place because you've been able to give me a high level of exposure to things that I thought, well, this should just be this way.
Mhm.
Shame on me for not thinking through that, hey, everyone, this isn't easy. This
No,
is
it's
really
not.
hard, especially when you're dealing with your own issues, and then you have to push them aside and be the caregiver when you're just like, I have nothing to give. I have
Right,
nothing left
yeah,
to give. Right? So I literally wanna go in the bedroom, close the door, and say "F you" to the world, and don't bother me. Don't
yeah,
come near me, right?
right.
So, I
It
think
is
that
hard.
selfless quality is hard. It's hard in the moment to have the emotional intelligence to know that this is where I need to go because this is where they need me to be, right?
Right,
And it's
yeah,
not about me right now. So, that's hard. It's hard not to be selfish.
yeah.
You do it phenomenally, me, not so much. Not so much.
I think you do just fine.
Well, this podcast is just we can compliment each other.
Yeah.
We'll just sit here and compliment
You're
each
doing
other.
so great. Yeah. No, but I do feel like parents, I mean, we all need to be encouraged because it's hard coming from it's actually very strange, and I think a lot of people can relate that are parents. You reflect on your own upbringing when you have kids. You start really looking at how you were raised, and our parents were human beings, and they made mistakes. But no one's perfect, and there is no freaking parenting guide, like, those baby books when you first have a baby, it's like what to do when you first have a baby.
There's nothing
Yeah.
in it about any of this.
No. I mean, like, there needs to be, like, boot camp on raising teenagers because I thought, "Oh, I'll be prepared," No, no, you're not prepared, and it's amazing what situations you find yourself in. But if you look at your upbringing and you recognize a lot of, and I hate to use the word failures of your parents, but things that were traumatic for you, whether your parents knew it or not, you have to heal that in yourself so that you can be whole for these little people, and I say little people, but teenagers, so that you're not bringing a lot of that baggage into the relationship with your kids. And I think that's
Yeah.
really important to be self-aware about, and it's hard to separate that
Yeah.
out, and to heal yourself, but I really commend parents who make that effort and say, "Yeah, I need some healing, and I need to be at least 90% to be able to raise these people that have been gifted to me, and create great citizens for the world." I mean, I know it sounds cheesy, but
No.
there is so much complexity to parenting, like in your brain as a parent. You focus on like your life as a kid, and then you focus on how you are now, and it's hard. Like it's not for the faint of heart.
No. No, and you going back to the baby books, I just thought of I was like, "Gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could swaddle our teenagers? Just
Yeah,
swaddle them so they can't move, they're just in a cocoon," right? Or actually swaddle the parents, because
right.
oftentimes I'm like, "I don't
We
wanna
need
move,
it.
just put me in a cocoon," and
Yes.
and I don't wanna move and have access to anything.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And another point to make. So I feel like as this is the teenage brain, it's you don't look at your parents as human beings. They're just
Right.
these there's just these beings, and they don't have feelings, and they don't have, they're the money, they're the wallets and the whatever, and trying to get your kids to understand that you are human, that you cry, that, you get upset. You and I talked about this. It's like, I don't think we as parents need to hide our emotions. We don't need to be strong, quote unquote, for our kids. I feel that sets a precedent that it's not okay to show your feelings, so you helped me with that, being able to cry in front of the kids or to say if I'm upset, or if I'm having a bad day. Not to say you want to be like that all the time, but it's okay every now and then to show that you're a human being. And you, like me telling the kids sometimes, hey, that hurt my feelings.
And I think too, it's a great point and something that we've really tried to be, not that you want to be a basket case in front of your kids all the
No,
time, but
no.
on the flip side is to show when they hurt your feelings, right?
Yes,
Like, wow,
that's
that
a big
what you
one.
just said really hurt my feeling. I'm actually hurt by what you said. And it's not to make them feel guilty. It's to make them aware that, yes, just because we're older doesn't mean that things hurt
Right.
less.
Yeah.
So
It
it
actually hurts
it's
more.
right. It's still, and especially coming from someone that is supposed to love and care about you. So
Right,
sometimes it's
right,
it's really hard. So being raised, I'm hoping that generationally that phases out differently or evolves because,
right.
in my generation and our generation,
Yeah,
if I go the gender route, right? Like men of my age, you just didn't really, you weren't taught to be emotional. You had to be strong. You had to
right.
show up, right? You had to be the rock. You had to be the disciplinarian. You had to be the forceful one or the stronger voice. And I think showing up as a team and co-parenting through it, and it can't just be, okay, this person is always the disciplinarian. This
Right.
person is always the, kissing boo-boos and, the person that makes it better. Collectively, you need to team and do that
Yes, yeah.
because, I joke, I use this euphemism at work all the time. It's like, well, people are going to go run around to everybody until they get the answer they want.
So true. Yeah.
So don't just do away with that. You can't
Right.
do that because we're always, and that is one thing I will give you. If any advice I could give anyone that's walking into a blended family situation is the amount of support you gave me to help co parent and the trust that I had everyone's best interest and we would
Yes,
talk through
yeah,
it,
that was a big one.
but you did not go behind my back and say, "He's just having a bad day. Let him go."
Yeah,
Right? Like
that
you supported what we were doing. So
right,
that to me, that helped me grow the confidence that we are a team and we're able to do this, right? Because
right.
you're supporting me. And I'm not saying, you were supporting things that really were egregious, but I
No,
think
no.
we would always, even if we weren't comfortable with the decision, we supported each other through it, and it wasn't like, "Well, I told you so. I told you this
No.
was gonna happen."
Yeah, that's so important. I feel like if you and I had argued or we had to be on the same page, like, we just had to, it was required, and, it took a lot of processing power in my brain. Like, if something would happen with the kids, with either of them, I always had to stop and walk away because I always wanted to align with you on how to address something, and I think that's super important is don't like, if I could give any advice, try not to address it right away if you're not sure what the answer or the consequence should be or what your answer should be. I say team up, talk through it. And one of the things that we've had over the years is the amount of conversation you and I have had about all sorts of situations has been so important. Not flying off the handle right away, but saying, okay, this happened with Travis or Rebecca, and you and I need to have a talk about it. And then we need to go talk to them together, or I need to address it. But having that processing time was really helpful for me. You're a lot faster in the brain than I am, but I really always had to like say, okay, I got to put the emotion away and I have to look at it objectively. And sometimes I had to walk away and spend, even overnight thinking about it because it was always funny. Travis would come back or when I would approach him about something, like, hours later or a day later, he'd be like, you do this. You always" like, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna say something, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "But would you rather have me said something the day before when I felt a certain way, or would you rather have, like, calm, collected me?" And it's kind of like a joke now, but yeah, I totally agree with that.
And I think one thing too is you brought this up earlier is, reaping the fruits of your labor, and a bit of an
Yes.
interesting kind of spin on that is, when both kids started to become more independent.
Mhm.
One of the things that was always interesting that they would say is, gosh, my roommate or my friend, they don't know how to cook. They don't know how to
Yes,
do their
yes.
laundry. They're messy, right? One of the things I was not prepared for walking into this house outside the dishes was how neat and tidy the kids were, right? Like I'm a slob. I'm an
Yeah,
absolute,
you're not.
whirling dervish in the house. Like my shit's everywhere. So
Only with sneakers.
yeah, but so, and making the bed every morning. Like your
Right, yeah.
kids made the bed. I was like, "Who does that?"
Yeah.
every morning, and Travis was always rearranging his room.
Yes,
That
he was
room was always perfectly neat. Everyone was very tidy, and I'm like, "Gosh, this is weird." And I always thought, "Well, you must really, whip him into shape because that's just not normal in my
yeah,
in my mind." So I found it interesting as they get out further into the world, they're seeing this
so
stuff. Now, I don't wanna
true.
make them neurotic, right? Where it's like, "Oh my god, I have this has to be done this way." But it does provide a little bit of good feeling. It's like, "Okay, you did learn, you did
Yes,
listen, you
so
did
true.
experience," and it was a short amount of time, and they were in a bit of a pressure cooker for a bit, just like we
Right.
were,
Yeah,
to understand, and to me, it will be nothing but helpful for them further in life as they have responsibility,
right.
and they understand that that responsibility is just not because someone told them they had to be responsible. They're
Yes,
responsible to be better people, and you're responsible for things now.
yeah,
So,
so
learning
true.
that earlier than later and having the ability to plow through that, I mean, we've been through a ton with
We
that.
have.
A ton,
I
a
I
ton.
do I wanna mention one more thing because I feel like it's important. Growing up, I felt and I've mentioned this to a couple of friends, that I have felt growing up very judged, when I would tell someone about a dream that I would or, "Hey, I wanna do such and such in life," or, dating or clothing, or if I wanted to go do something. I I often felt a lot of judgment, and I love my parents, but I think it was they were always afraid that something would happen to me, so they would always be like, "Oh, we don't think that's a good idea," or this or that, and I was very rebellious as a teenager. I didn't like feeling under the thumb, I wanted to explore and experiment, and so I always said, "I'm not going to do that with my kids." Like, when they come to me and tell me something that is shocking, I'm gonna keep my face very stoic, and I will process it later behind a closed door and talk to them later about it, and so I will say that speaking from experience, and you tell me like your observations, it has been so great in building relationships with both the kids to be able to, for them to be able to come to me, to us, and be able to tell us anything without fear of judgment, like a snide comment like, "Well, why are you doing that?" Or, "Well, that's not a good idea," or, "Why did you do that?" I think it created space for them to tell us anything and everything. Now, granted, I'm sure there are things that they don't tell us, but for the most part, they're like, "Hey," they'll tell us about friends or experiences they've had or thoughts or dreams. "Hey, I want to participate in this or that." And I feel like we've always been super supportive. And if there have been things that have gone on that were shocking, like I mean, I remember one thing specifically. I came to you and I was like, I can't believe they just told me that, and then you're like, I can't believe they just told you that, and we think, okay, well, what should our response be? And it's never like judgment. It's more of, hey, here's what our experiences have been with this or that, and be able to have a two-way dialogue, I think has been so amazing. And if I could encourage parents in general, have that conversation. Don't be afraid to have deep conversations with your kids about topics that you think are taboo, sex or drugs, alcohol, what you want to do in life, So I mean, what was your perspective on that?
I could not believe the conversations that were occurring. I could not bel I cou the whole time I would hear these things and I'd be like, "I would have never told that to my parents.
Yeah.
I would have never told that to anyone."
Right, right.
So, and I think for me, the you captured it earlier on when you were talking is the snarkiness. I'm a super snarky, sarcastic person,
Yes,
so
you
it's
are.
very
You are.
it's very hard for me not to be like, say something along those lines
Yeah.
to create the experience that you didn't want to create. So respecting that was difficult for me because it's just ingrained in my personality. So it
Yeah.
took some time. Like I'm not saying it was like a switch, but I have never been more proud of all of everyone for feeling comfortable that, and it's also like you don't want to be the friend, right?
Yeah,
all the time.
no. You
But
can't swing the pendulum too far in one direction, you know?
being the mentor, the coach, the
Yes,
guide
right.
to be able to listen and then respond, and I feel like both of us have shared a lot of our life with the kids,
Right.
experiences,
Yes. Good and bad.
how right? And not shying away from past things. Now, granted, you
You don't
tailor
wanna tell
that,
everything, yeah.
but I do think that being honest, and it's not to be cool, right? I didn't do
No,
the
yeah.
right, it's to really show that, this was my experience when something like that happened, and this is how it impacted me or something along those lines. I feel like one of the things I always love, and I have to say both of the kids are very good about this. Like, what 18-year-old that just left home for the first time talks to their parents constantly? Not
Right,
but in a good positive way, like, "Hey, I just did this. I'm really excited. I wanted to share it with you." It's not,
right,
"Hey, I need money. Hey, I'm miserable." It's sharing all this good experience and just having a dialogue and a conversation.
right.
So, I find that incredibly endearing, and it's funny because 'cause I'm not used
Yeah,
to it, right? I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh gosh, why are you calling me?" That's
Well,
my
and
first reaction. "Why are you
right.
calling me?" Right?
Uh-huh.
Something's happening. Something's wrong.
Yeah,
And
but it
I
never
hate
is usually.
no, and I hate that quality about me because that's it. I don't wanna go there first. I wanna go,
Right.
"I can't wait to hear what you have to say."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's you. That is you. And if I had any more advice to a blended family, be the Catherine. "I can't wait to
Oh,
hear what you have to say." Not, "Oh my god, I'm dreading what I'm gonna hear. I can't
yeah,
wait to hear what you have to say. I can't wait to share the experience with you, and I can't wait to talk about it."
yeah.
If you can
Oh,
change that frame in that way, I have never been more free in my thinking since I've learned that quality.
right,
So,
yeah.
an amazing nugget of wisdom there that you have planted that seed, and it has definitely grown, and I am so grateful for the opportunity that not only you have provided, but the children have provided for me to be able to cultivate that differently than my experience in the past. We definitely covered a lot of
We
ground in
did.
this one. We'll have to
Yes,
see how this one chops up, but we went deep into the well today, right? So
we did.
basically parent I guess if you wanted to capture a parenting later in life is like joining a marathon halfway through and realizing you're still out of breath, right? So it's a slower pace, but it feels more intense.
Yes,
And in
definitely.
closing, I know we keep touching on it, but if you had to truly give a nugget of advice in a quick soundbite, what advice would you give to people that are divorced or getting into a relationship
Oh,
with
good
kids,
question.
right? And blending that family together from the beginning till, years later. What advice do you give to people to help them kind of navigate through that?
I think that is an awesome question, and what I would say to kind of summarize is that kids know when you don't want them around. You know, they can feel it even if you're not saying it. And if you can create a space, it doesn't matter if you're divorced 20 times, it doesn't matter if you're not married, you're just with a partner. It doesn't matter the situation. If you can create a loving environment, they will remember that for the rest of their lives. And if you can be patient, and if you can be consistent, and if you dedicate to the mission, you commit to the mission, you will definitely see the rewards. I mean, I guarantee it. That's what I would say to encourage parents is don't give up. You know, when it's hard, you dig in harder. So that's the advice I would give.
I can't even say anything in response. That literally captures it in the perfect way, right? Kids know when you don't want them around.
They do.
That
They
that hit
really do.
hard, and speaking from experience, we all have felt something similar at some point in life, so what a great way to approach the co-parenting blended family model is always make people feel like they belong and are welcomed and
Yes.
loved, right? So lead, have heart, humor, and a whole lot of patience, and
Yes.
you
Humor is
will
good.
you will f and family isn't just blood, so remember
So
that.
true. Yes.
It just isn't blood. So it is how you define it. And thank you for allowing me to be part of this amazing experience. And thank you for talking about it today. This topic is a little bit can be uncomfortable. I know it's uncomfortable for me. So thank you for kind of dipping your toe in these waters. And I'll
Mm.
be curious, if people want us to dig a little deeper in the well on this topic,
Yes.
because we
Yeah,
actually have a lot of context around this. I'm
we
not saying
do.
we're experts by any means, but we will definitely share our experience and be as vulnerable as we can and really be honest about what we went through. And
And ask
so,
us questions. If you have questions
yeah,
or a situation, I mean, we're happy to share any insight that we've gained over the years.
absolutely. So this concludes episode 3 of the well,
Yes.
family episode. So make sure that you're like, follow, subscribe on all the platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. So you can
Yes.
find us on all the major platforms. We really appreciate any support, comments, engagement. We're really looking to see, what resonates with everybody. So make sure you tune in. We do this every Sunday. We release it throughout the week. The full episodes are all available on all platforms except for obviously TikTok because it's not really good for long form content. So YouTube and the podcast are on Spotify and Apple. So tune in and have a great Sunday.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.